Global stock markets in a tailspin as investors brace for US tariffs. Can AI drive the adoption of the still largely experimental quantum computing? And how one Turkish bakery in London is meeting the surge in demand for baklava this Eid. Hello, I'm Oscar Sabakti with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Trade war fears have sent global stock markets tumbling after Donald Trump said US tariffs would essentially cover all countries. Japan's Nikkei has plunged almost 4%, deepening a sell-off that began last week amid fears that Trump's broad-based tariffs could ignite a global trade war. South Korea's Kospi and Kosdaq both shed around 3%, while shares in mainland China and Hong Kong have also declined as trade tensions rattle investor confidence. Oil prices have opened the week lower, heading for a modest quarterly decline. This comes despite Trump's warning that he may impose secondary tariffs on buyers of Russian oil if he believes Moscow is obstructing his efforts to end the Ukraine war. Meanwhile, gold has surged past $3,100, that is, hitting an all-time high as investors seek safe haven assets. Taking a look at currencies, the Japanese yen has strengthened as investors flee to safety. The US dollar is also under pressure as a rush to US Treasuries drives the 10-year yield down 6 basis points to just below 4.2%. The US president has provided few details, but said late on Sunday that his tariffs would essentially hit all countries on April 2nd. Let's get more now with Josh Mahoney, Chief Market Analyst at Scope Markets. He joins us now from London. Welcome back to the program, Josh. The global rout in equities is continuing over Donald Trump's tariff threats. How worried are you about risk assets right now?
I am, quite frankly. I don't necessarily think that this is over, because each time that you think that Donald Trump will come out with something that indicates the potential bottom or the point at which we can start to think in a bit more of a positive light, he then turns around and says something like this, something like it could hit all countries. Now, it wasn't so long ago that he was saying, you know, you're going to be surprised. This is going to be a lot better than people think. It's not going to be as bad as people think. And so we had started to sort of soften our approach on what April the 2nd exactly was going to mean. Now we hear that it could hit all countries. Certainly, I don't think he's taking his lead or his instructions from the stock market, because I think it's really at risk of deepening further, because it's not only a case of just trying to realign trade with other countries. It's essentially going to hit the global growth picture, and we don't necessarily know how long that's going to go on for. He doesn't seem like he's about to suddenly turn around and reverse these strategies.
Now, amid these worries on stock markets, we are seeing a flee to safe havens like gold and bonds. Do you expect that to continue in the coming weeks and months? Just how much higher could they go?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been talking about this for a long time and saying how high can gold go. It's always difficult to know exactly what a target is, because you don't know how fast these moves are going to happen. But certainly we have the framework for continued upside when it comes to gold, in no small part because you have significant fears around the global economic picture. But you also have the idea that central banks are going to have to pick up the slack. If we see weakness in terms of the economic outlook, then if Trump's not going to lift the economy, then it's going to have to come down to Federal Reserve. And if the Federal Reserve do enact a looser monetary policy, that generally should come to the benefit of gold. And then when it comes to the 10-year, well, that's something that Donald Trump really has to drive down, in no small part because he has a huge amount of debt that's rolling over the course of this year, and needs to bring down the debt obligations and the cost of rolling over that debt. And notably, there's a close relationship between the 10-year yield and the US dollar, and that's why we're seeing this weakness coming into play for the greenback, and it's probably likely to continue as well.
We know that governments around the world are threatening retaliatory measures, including the UK, where you are. This was unheard of the first time around that Donald Trump was in power, because leaders then realised they could strike deals on the side to avert the harshest measures that Trump was threatening. If countries like the UK impose tariffs of their own on US goods, is that simply going to plunge the stock market even further?
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, you're fighting against a country that has a huge amount of power when it comes to the sort of demand from the US. That's the reason why they have such a huge trade deficit with so many of these countries, because the US consumer is massive. They have very high wages. They spend a lot of money. So if you want to go tit for tat with the US, it's probably not a great position to be in. What you could say, though, is that we did hear at the back end of last week about good conversations taking place between Mark Carney and Donald Trump about a potential for a new trade deal. We've seen a similar kind of thing here over the course of the weekend, with Keir Starmer saying that he'd spoken to the White House and it had been a good conversation. So there is still hope that they will be able to one by one strike trade deals. I don't necessarily think that Donald Trump's long-term aim is to essentially crash the world economy. So I do think that he probably would make these deals on the sidelines.
Okay, Josh Mahoney, great to get your thoughts as always. Thank you. Now, quantum computing is a rapidly emerging technology that harnesses the laws of quantum mechanics to solve problems too complex for today's computers. If that sounds too complicated, you're not alone. It's been a dream of scientists for decades, yet the everyday adoption of the technology has proved elusive. But could AI change all that? Emre Boz finds out.
Quantum computers process data at speeds that dwarf today's machines. They tackle complex problems like optimizing supply chains and cracking cryptography with far greater efficiency than standard computers.
It's a completely different way of manipulating information, and it is, from what we know of the laws of physics, the most powerful kind of information processor that we can make.
Scientists are constantly looking at ways to enhance how these computers work.
We are developing semiconductor chips very similar to the ones in a phone or in a computer. So these semiconductor chips have very tiny transistors in which we want to exploit quantum behavior to develop new technologies. As we develop quantum computing, I think it's inevitable to think not only as we do now how AI can help us develop these technologies further, but also how these technologies might enhance AI.
AI is helping speed up design and tackle performance challenges for these chips. A report by the Quantum Insider forecasts that quantum computing will contribute $1 trillion in value by 2035. The technology is already impacting sectors like tech, pharmaceuticals for drug discovery, and finance for portfolio optimization and risk management. The global quantum computing market, valued at $10.4 billion in 2024, is expected to exceed $17 billion by 2032. Thus, as AI develops, the capacity and profitability of quantum computers will keep on expanding. Emre Boz, TRT World.
Well, let's get more on this now with tech journalist and author Chris Stokel-Walker. He joins us from Newcastle in the UK. Good to have you back with us, Chris. Quantum computers have been a dream of physicists and scientists since the 80s. Could you explain for us what quantum computing is in a nutshell and how it differs from traditional computing?
Yeah, it's still very early in the morning, so I'll try not to get too technical with this. But essentially, with computers, we have two states in which our bits, which we call the key components, I suppose, of how we actually calculate things within our computers exist. So we have zeros and ones, on or off, and those are the things that have been running computers for, frankly, decades now. Quantum is slightly different. Quantum allows you to have simultaneous states of on and off because of a thing called a qubit. Now, this is a complicated law of physics, the quantum idea that actually you can not just be in one state or the other, but you can be in both simultaneously, means that you can do multiple equations whenever you want, wherever you want, and that essentially means that this is supercharging the power. So that idea of quantum physics and the qubit rather than the computer bit is a thing that really separates quantum from traditional computing.
Now, Julian Kelly, Google Quantum AI's Director of Hardware, says the technology is only 5 years away from running practical applications that can't be calculated on modern computers. How game-changing could this be, and what real-world applications could there be?
Yeah, it could be huge. And I think it is worth pointing out that obviously Google has a little bit of an interest in this being around the corner. So they will know something perhaps that we don't, although it isn't quite settled that that timeline of 5 years is necessarily guaranteed. But in terms of what it can do, that ability to compute things at speed and at a scale that we haven't seen before means that it could be a game changer for all sorts of industries. One of the things that was highlighted there was the idea of drug discovery. Now, that costs an awful lot of money, millions of dollars, in order to develop drugs in real life through tests that you do on humans. If you can do that in a lab and you can simulate that using quantum computers, basically passing through vast volumes of data, then suddenly that becomes cheaper and more economical. So there are ideas that this could have new breakthroughs there. So basically, anything where you have a huge amount of data and you're able to kind of look through it at speed and at scale, that is where this is going to make a real difference.
When we look at chip makers like NVIDIA, it doesn't currently make quantum processors, but the company recently held a Quantum Day event that was after the CEO Jensen Huang cast doubt on whether useful quantum computers would actually hit the market in the next 15 years. Should chip makers, in your opinion, who've been cashing in on the current AI boom, also be looking at quantum computing, even though there is a lot of doubt as to when we might actually see those computers hit the market?
Yeah, I think Jensen Huang's kind of telling us what we need to think about here, which is that this is a technology coming around the corner, but it is not here yet. And I think it's notable that he, as frankly the owner of the biggest chip maker in the world, is saying he's going to try and be in both boats. He's going to try and ride both horses at the same time. So they are focusing a lot of their attention currently on the current crop of AI chips that are really important, those GPUs, while also recognizing that quantum is a technology that is currently relatively theoretical. There are some elements of this that have been done in practice, but they are still very much lab-based, and there are a handful of quantum computers out there, but frankly, they're so expensive to get access to that most people wouldn't have use of it. But if they do start developing these things and the price comes down, there is a new boom, and frankly, that could be a new business opportunity. So smart chip makers, I think, are probably trying to do both things at the same time.
Okay, Chris Stokel-Walker, we'll have to leave it there, but really good to get your thoughts as always. Thank you. Now, a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. China's manufacturing sector grew at its fastest pace in 12 months in March, lifted by strong new orders. The official PMI rose to over 50, signalling expansion for the world's second largest economy, despite rising trade tensions with the US. But the relief may be short-lived, with President Trump expected to announce new tariffs on Chinese goods this week. China has discovered a large oil field in the South China Sea with more than 100 million tonnes of proven reserves. Authorities say early test drilling shows it can also produce natural gas. The discovery is part of China's push to boost its domestic energy supply. Argentina is seeking more than 40% of a $20 billion loan from the IMF, as announced by the Economy Minister Luis Caputo. The request follows the country's efforts to reduce its fiscal deficit and public spending, aiming to strengthen central bank reserves and ease foreign exchange restrictions. The IMF board must approve the new four-year program, which builds on a previous $44 billion deal from 2018. And Singapore-based BOC Aviation says it will buy 120 new planes to expand its fleet. The deal includes 70 planes from Airbus and 50 from Boeing. The company plans to reach 1,000 planes by 2030 as global travel demand rises. Now, still ahead on the program, Muslims around the world celebrate Eid al-Fitr despite global economic challenges. We'll find out more after the break. Sri Lanka's new government is under pressure to turn promise into progress on everything from the cost of living to the legacy of corruption. In one of its first interviews to foreign media, the government has told TRT World that stamping out fraud includes pursuing criminal charges against one of the most powerful political families and its previous presidents. Adam Charlton reports.
Civil war, natural disaster, pandemic, political and economic turmoil. Sri Lanka has been plagued by almost every crisis imaginable since the start of the century.
When you've hit the bottom of the pot, where else do you go? You only rise.
The $1.5 billion IT company Hari Padmanabhan works for represents the foreign investment Sri Lanka needs to attract. And it was one of the first companies to commit to the Port City Colombo project, a vast area of reclaimed land funded by China that wants to rival Singapore and Dubai. For Tulsi Alawahara, who has been with the Port City project since the start, concerns about debt, sovereignty and security are unfounded.
China's involvement is only as a developer for this. And this is administered, governed, licensed by the Port City Economic Commission, which is passed by an Act of Parliament.
One thing Sri Lanka needs above all else, confidence. Confidence from investors and confidence in its leaders to punish the people who caused the worst economic crisis in its history. The Sri Lankan government told TRT World's David Foster that rooting out corruption includes pursuing the former presidents Gotabaya and Mahinda Rajapaksa.
If you stay in power, will the Rajapaksas be charged?
Yes.
And they will be brought before the court?
They will be brought before the law. It's up to them to prove not guilty in front of the law.
Sri Lanka's tuk-tuk drivers were among the hardest hit by the economic crisis, as petrol pumps ran dry and prices rocketed by 137% in 6 months. Tushari, who supports herself and her 2 daughters, is challenging a male-dominated industry.
I don't want my daughters to have a hard life like I have had. I want them to be educated, find a better job, and live a better life.
Sri Lankans are optimistic about the future. Now they need stability to prosper. Adam Charlton, TRT World, Sri Lanka.
As Muslims around the world celebrate Eid, one sweet treat is especially in high demand: baklava. Bakeries are working around the clock to meet the surge in orders, with sales soaring during this festive period. Tualai Kalyon Hasna Dorolu has visited one of London's busiest pastry shops to find out how they're meeting the demand.
Eid, the Muslim festival marking the end of Ramadan, is here. Now it's time for gratitude and indulgence.
As you can see, we have specially boxed baklava, including varieties with pistachio and walnuts. We are carefully packaging them in special boxes. As you know, sales increase during the holiday season, and so does the demand for baklava. We are working to meet these demands.
During Eid, sales of this iconic dessert skyrocket, with some bakeries reporting a 3-fold increase in production. Baklava was originally created for the sultans during Ottoman times in what is now Turkey. Today, the country consumes 1,150 tons of baklava annually, with an average of 4.6 kilograms per person per year. As the home of baklava, Turkey exports it worldwide. The United States is the largest importer, followed by Germany and Saudi Arabia. According to Baklava Association, Turkey's baklava exports are worth about $30 million. So, how popular is it in London?
The festive season is really crowded here, especially the Knightsbridge Street is really busy, so we are expecting to be a lot of people.
The scent of freshly baked baklava fills the air here, and demand is higher than ever.
I've definitely had it before many times, and I think it's absolutely delicious.
It's really lovely, really lovely. And there's so many different flavours as well, so it's perfect.
It's really nice. I really like the layer. It's a little bit like croissant. I love it. It's delicious. Yes.
Beyond traditional baklava, chocolate, vegan and gluten-free options are now available, making sure there is something for everyone. For countries with Ottoman heritage, from Turkey to Greece, through Lebanon and Syria, baklava is all about joy. Whether celebrating a newborn, a new job, or simply gathering with family for Eid, baklava remains a symbol of happiness. Classic or modern, this delicious pastry brings people together from Istanbul to London, making Eid sweeter worldwide. Tülay Kalyon Haznederoğlu, TRT World, London.
In Syria, despite security threats, people have poured into mosques across the country to offer Eid prayers for the first time since the fall of the Assad regime. TRT World's Hassan Abdullah has more from Damascus.
Well, there is tremendous excitement here at the Ummami Mosque, also known as the Grand Mosque in Damascus. Remember, this is the first Eid al-Fitr after the fall of the Bashar al-Assad regime. So as you can imagine, a lot of excitement here, and people are basically saying that they hope this excitement is going to continue. Now, of course, there are some concerns, especially economic concerns, given that a very large percentage of the population is living below the poverty line. And of course, when you look at one of the latest UN reports that says that more than 500,000 Syrian children are severely malnutritioned. So of course, these concerns are there, but at the same time, they're saying that the new provisional government is giving them some hope. So there's a mixture of concerns and hopes. And of course, there's a concern about the security situation as well. There have been warnings about terrorist organizations like Daesh and others trying to carry out sabotage operations and threatening the security of this country to destabilize the situation. So of course, those concerns are there, but overall, a lot of excitement here.
Now, the festival of Eid is typically marked with prayers and festivities that include family visits and gatherings. TRT World's Lape Olornoye has been to one such event in London.
Hundreds of people have just broken their fast here at the iconic Trafalgar Square. It's been more than a meal, though. It's been about connection, conversation and community. That has been very much present. It's the 12th year that this type of event has been running. And this year, just like last year, has been sponsored by the Turkish Directorate of Communications. Earlier, we spoke to the ambassador, Mr. Osman Koray Ertash, who shared some of the importance in those collaborations.
I think there's a strong message of solidarity and peace is being given here from London through these iftars. And as you know, these iftars are joined by Muslims, non-Muslims, friends. So it's a community event. And from London, we are giving a message that peace is possible despite all the difficulties around the world. And we are proud as Turkey and Directorate of Communications to support this lofty event.
More and more of these types of events have been, of course, increasing year on year. This hasn't been the only open iftar that has taken place. There have been many popping up across the last 30 days. This, of course, wraps up the holy month of Ramadan and gives the organisers another year to prepare for yet another open iftar, something that means so much to the people that live here and to the wider Muslim community and diaspora here in the UK. We also caught up with the organizer of the event, and here's what he had to say.
For us, Ramadan Celebration as a charity, we're based here in London for the past 12 years. Our mission is to bring communities together to better understand each other. So we are very proud in many ways to represent a pillar of Britain's rich cultural ecology. So that also will affect as well how people are, buying and purchasing, and also the level of sort of consumerism, looking at ethical brands that want to work with us across all of our Ramadan festival. Of course, Ramadan is a moment for us to step back a bit, and so what we're trying to do is almost remind people that we can come together and celebrate these significant moments and events.
Well, it's evident that the spirit of Ramadan has been very much infectious to everyone here. This place today has hosted not just people from the Muslim community, but also from the wider British community, speakers from the political landscape and the likes. This, of course, will encourage those from the wider community to continue to engage with events like this, improve community collaborations, and also open up events for more and more Ramadan iftars to open up in the wider British community.
In Lebanon, Hezbollah has warned if attacks from Israel continue, the group will respond. In a televised address, Naim Qassem called for an end to the Israeli aggression. Israel launched its first major assault on Beirut's southern suburbs on Friday, targeting a drone storage facility belonging to the group. It came months after a ceasefire in November. UN peacekeepers also said they came under Israeli fire on Saturday along the blue line that separates Lebanon and Israel. Despite the tensions, many in Lebanon have been cautiously preparing for this year's Eid celebrations. Danielle Neri has the story.
As Muslims around the world prepare for Eid al-Fitr celebrations, people of southern Lebanon are marking the holiday in the face of adversity.
This Eid is difficult. Eid is meant to bring joy, but Gaza is bleeding. Lebanon has been under fire up until yesterday when there were airstrikes in Tyre. So this Eid is incomplete for us.
In towns like Sheba, the atmosphere is even more somber, where hope feels steadily more out of reach.
There are no preparations for Eid, not before Eid, nor in Ramadan, nor in these past months. There is nothing.
Eid arrives just days after Israel launched an attack on suburban Beirut, marking the first strike since the November ceasefire agreement.
Nothing is left. It's all gone. All the balconies are destroyed. There is no furniture at home. It's all destroyed.
This is compounded by Lebanon's crippling economic crisis. The country has been operating on a cash economy, leading to rampant inflation and pushing nearly half the population into poverty.
We hope that this holiday will be a time of joy, smiles, and happiness, and a turning point for change towards the better, as we forget the painful past we went through during the war. We hope the holiday will bring goodness and blessings to everyone, Allah willing.
Despite the palpable hardships, the Lebanese people continue to find ways to celebrate, holding on to hope for brighter days ahead. Danielle Neri, TRT World.
And that is your latest business and finance news. Stay with us. Debrief is next. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.